ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight? What? I always ask that of all my prey. I just like the sound of it.
Don't kill me, man! Don't kill me! Don't kill me, man!
I'm not going to kill you. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to tell all your friends about me. I'm Batman.
Welcome, everyone. This is episode 7 of the Comics in Motion podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Chris Phelps, and my co-host is Mr. Dave Horrocks.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Comics in Motion podcast. What we like to do here is we like to review comic-based media, so things like TV, films, games as well, although we haven't got around to any games, but we will do. And we review things from a couple of different perspectives. So myself, I'm looking at these things as a long-time kind of comic book nerd. Chris is looking at it without that kind of baggage behind him as well. And so what we try and do is we try and walk through these movies and we'll give those couple of different perspectives on it. And certainly we're at episode 7 now. I've really been enjoying this short journey, and we're planning to make it a lot longer journey. But so Chris, I mean, other people seem to be enjoying it as well.
Yeah, it's quite surprising, Dave. The interaction and the growth on the social media of the actual podcast has been phenomenal. I mean, as we said, each week we're messing around with different formats, what works and what doesn't. One of the things that we keep doing consistently is the sort of facts surrounding each podcast. So if anyone who's not listening has come across our social media, on Twitter, it's just Comics in Motion P. And what we do is a couple of times a day, we're just putting like facts up around the actual TV series, film, or obviously an upcoming game, and just different things. And that seems to be getting quite a good following and retweets, likes, people asking questions. People like this week, one of the people who's following us was commenting on a Jason Patrick pilot that happened called Powers, which had come off the back, I think, of him being in Losers. So I sort of researched a bit of that. It didn't last very long because it was in sort of pre-production and the sort of thing. But these are the sort of things that are sort of helping us as well, improving our knowledge. And that's what the social media and the community that's what social media and the community around Comics in Motion is all about. We're all just fans of the comic book genre, whether it be comics like yourself or sort of like the mainstream TV and films and games like myself. So it's good. It's a good learning curve, Dave, and I absolutely love it. And I love the fact that these people out there who know far more than me and sort of educating. Yeah, and you've got, and I'll be honest with you, Dave, I'm the one. Most of the time we're putting the facts together. I'm throwing them out there and I'm double checking, triple checking my spelling and if I missed anything because I could be the worst for just throwing some out there. So
I did wince a little bit when you were asking about what Powers was.
Oh, sorry.
Because I only saw it after, and I was, oh man, Bendis, he's quite a legendary guy. He was doing a lot of indie stuff, worked for Marvel for years. Was really one of those driving forces behind kind of rebranding the way the Avengers was structured, and he's just recently, very recently, moved across to DC. But yeah, no, these things are going to happen. I'm only teasing you, so.
Well, this could be my last episode today. So let's make it a good one. No, hey, David, but that's where you come in with your knowledge, because I don't know the background on a lot of this stuff, even though I watch the films and things like that. Things like that I would have no knowledge on, which is...
One thing is for sure, there are probably a billion people out there who have a lot more comics knowledge than I do.
Yeah.
But so there's always going to be someone who knows a bit more than you. So we don't profess to know everything. So more than happy for someone to come out and if we get things wrong, which we will do, we probably have done. We just don't know yet. Come out and tell us, and there's no issue with that at all.
Well, one thing that did come out last week, Dave, was the fact that the review that we've both sort of settled on with Losers was, obviously, we sent it to Hell's Kitchen, and I was quite surprised by the response of how favourable it was by people in the comic book sort of world and the fans and that.
Yeah. So this takes me back to the band actually, because I feel like I'm the perennial bass player, aren't I? So yourself, Chris, you're up there at the front of the stage, get the crowd to clap and whatever, and everyone's sort of clapping and everything. The bass player does it. I'm doing it on my own. So I put a poll out there and we discussed it. We just had the idea, didn't we, in the last episode? I said, well, we've given our review scores. Let's see what the fans think. And we'd had a pretty good response to the Avengers trailer. So we had loads of people kind of voting on what they thought about that. But I think the review system was possibly a bit abstract. And so I put it up there. Now, I voted one. I voted one Hell's Kitchen, and I noticed there was another Hell's Kitchen vote in there. I thought, oh, that must be Chris. But Chris, did you actually vote for us?
No.
No.
Well, let's tell a story. Dave actually messaged me before. Oh no, it wasn't before. Yeah, it was before we came on air, and obviously the raw footage of this has lasted half an hour already. We've only just started because I've been in absolute tears here at some of the things. But what's come to sort of fruition is Dave's taking his time to create a poll, and I didn't even go anywhere near it because I didn't see it, because we both control the Twitter, social media. So these things that I'm putting up and Dave's putting up, and sometimes you miss them. So I'm going to have to make sure if we do one next week, I will actually comment on it and give a score, Dave, because I can only apologise.
Well, what I'd say is, I mean, I wasn't massively happy with it anyway, because what I found out was you can only have 4 options, whereas really we want 5 for our poll, don't we? So yeah. I had to split it across two tweets essentially. So it wasn't great. And I did say last week, I said, well, if one person responds, then we won't do it again. And up until you admitted that you weren't that second person voting for Hell's Kitchen, I thought you were the other person. So so we had double what I thought was the worst case scenario. So there we go, success.
Apologies. Sorry, Dave. Terrible.
No worries. So come on, people, step it up. So
great bit of a partnership. I've not even done it, have I? So anyway, I'll make sure to do it next week. But I'm surprised by the response we got on Losers, Dave, because there's a lot of people. It's in some of their favourite films, and I'm really surprised by that.
So I mean, again, possibly. The review system's a bit abstract, but actually just in terms of interaction, people responding and stuff, we did have quite a lot of people sticking their head up, didn't we? And
yeah,
saying, oh, I absolutely love this film, and felt a bit bad about, giving it the score that we did. Yeah,
I did honestly. I was thinking, oh no, I've missed something here. We're going to get, so we did. I mean, we did get a slate. I think the whole point of the podcast is it's going to be films we both enjoy and films we don't. I do and you don't, and that's the whole point. And we've all got different tastes. We look at Black Panther. What a polarizing review! You've sent it to Asgard, and I sent it to Halls of Justice. So it's it is what it is. And obviously, Nick Fury is going to be the sort of yardstick for whatever review is now ever since, because that's just become a legendary film.
Again, I still think it's not really a linear scale, is it? So,
no.
I think we might, at some point in the future, we might look back and say, you know what, we've done 10, 20, 30 or so reviews now. Actually, we might look back on this. You'd said that you might sort of change Black Panther if you saw it again, haven't you? So yes. There's nothing to stop us doing that from the future. But we just sort of tell it how it is, don't we? We give our own perspective. It's all subjective, so there's no objective measure to it. So it's just we watch these things and then we give it that score that we do at that time.
Exactly, and I'm sure these other people would have agreed, and other people who don't. But it is what it is, and it just we go with how we feel at the time. And I think that's the whole point of way this is working. I enjoy it, and I'm hoping people listening enjoy it. I hope what we're doing is good content. I feel we're putting out there good content as a sort of partnership in that, and I don't think we can ask for any more than that. Just got to keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, Twitter polls are Twitter polls. So we might, in a few episodes' time, we might give that another go. We'll see how it goes. But more importantly than that is probably getting across to iTunes or Stitcher or Acast and hitting that subscribe button so that when we do upload a new episode, you get that straight away. And also, while you're there, we really do appreciate those 5-star reviews as well. And what that does is that helps promote the podcast and boost us up those search algorithms and help other people find the podcast and like I say, help us grow. So if you do that, that will be lovely.
Yeah, no, and that's great. Yeah, please get involved in that, just for us as well, and yourselves. It helps improve the content as well as hopefully we grow the podcast. So, yeah, that's good. So, are we ready to jump in to this week's review, Dave?
Yeah. So let's go. Do you want to go ahead? Do you want to announce it?
Oh,
Even
okay.
though when people download the podcast and it says the name of the film in the podcast title, we feel compelled, don't we, to keep it a bit of a secret until we get to this point.
Yeah, we do actually. Yeah, that's a very good point actually. But anyone,
I suppose if someone could be in the car, couldn't they?
Yeah, exactly. And they get the subscription. Well, this week we decided to go with a film that myself and Dave was around about when we were sort of going into our teens, and it's the Tim Burton Batman from 1989 with Michael Keaton. And I'll pass you over to Dave to give you the comic book background, I think.
Yeah, so we wanted to pick this movie, didn't we? Because it was another landmark movie. So we've done the first couple of Superman movies, and I think this one is an equally important milestone. So let's go into a bit of comics background first. There's plenty of Batman movies now, so I'll say this particular piece, and then I'll keep having to revise it and tell us something new each time. So Batman debuted back in 1939 in Detective Comics 27. And we spoke, didn't we, about Superman starting off that golden age. So Batman really is one of those golden age characters. And really around that time, all the publishers were just clambering to try and find the next Superman.
Yeah.
And when we discussed that creation of Superman as well, what we said is sometimes the start of characters can be a little bit messy, and Batman is a little bit messy and certainly a bit more controversial. With Superman, it's very clear we had Siegel and Schuster. Those were the creators, and that was it.
Yeah.
For Batman, Bob Kane, who was an artist, for years and years was down as a creator of Batman. And the writer at the time, Bill Finger, didn't get any credit at all. And it was literally right up until 2015 that DC finally gave Bill Finger credit as co-creator. So, what the actual truth is, I mean, we'll never know, but piecing together the different accounts and what have you, it seems that Bob Kane was the guy. He absolutely came up with the name, and he came up with an initial design and invited Bill Finger to go around and look at it. And if I just look at my notes here, so quote from Bill Finger, I went over to Kane's and he had drawn a character who looked very much like Superman with kind of reddish tights. Can you imagine that? Batman with reddish tights?
No.
I believe with boots, no gloves, no gauntlets, a small domino mask, swinging on a rope. He had 2 stiff wings that were sticking out like bat wings, and under it was a sign, Batman. So the design really quite different from what we recognize today. And so Bill Finger actually inputted a lot into, he said, get rid of the domino mask, make it a cowl, and, give him gloves and stuff. So really inputted into the character that we actually know today.
Yeah.
And it's quite sad, really. I mean, he died basically penniless, and no credit or anything for the creation of that character and inputting into creating the Joker and things like that. So yeah, and there's been lots more kind of writers and artists over the years who built up on that Batman lore and added to his character and whatever. But that was basically the start of him. In terms of recommended reading for this movie, and probably from my own perspective as well. I mean, the thing, I guess, as a new comic book reader, if you were coming in now, Batman's really quite daunting, isn't he? Getting a bit like Superman. But two kind of shortish stories I would start off with that had a massive influence over this movie in particular are The Dark Knight Rises by Frank Miller. And that's a story about an older Batman. So if you think of Justice League now with that Ben Affleck character, he was no spring chicken, was he? He's more at the end of his career. And The Dark Knight Rises is a little bit of that. It's about Batman after his heyday and becoming an old man. And also The Killing Joke by Alan Moore. And really, this was the first time, and it's been done multiple times since, but this was the first time that he really started to look at the Joker as being the opposite side of the coin to Batman. So two sides of the same coin, as opposed to just this heroic this hero that we're going to stick up on a pedestal and this villain who's just absolutely scandalous. He was kind of looking at the psychology of those two, and it's a nice short graphic novel, self-contained story there, and I'd really recommend that. I probably, for my own personal taste, I'd probably go towards Killing Joke more. I've mentioned Alan Moore before. I mentioned him last week when I was talking about 2000 AD. He kind of came up through that system there. And he also wrote things like Watchmen, V for Vendetta, From Hell. He's a really well-known, thoughtful comic book writer. And that's it for comic book background. So, Chris, do you want to give us some background about the movie?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions, actually, Dave, regarding the comics section.
Okay.
And something that you skated over. I don't know why you skated over, but this Bill Finger, do you think he was called Willie Finger when he was younger?
So he was actually called Milton Finger. I don't know why. I mean, you would think he was just William, wouldn't you? But yeah, I'm not sure. It just says
the child in me was peeing myself laughing when you. Sorry, the child in me was laughing my head off as you were talking. Not being disrespectful, I just thought it was one of them daft names that just tickles you.
So I guess it's one of those. Do you think it's a generational thing that's kind of died out a little bit now, that people just choose different names that they're going to go by? Because I can't think of a really good example now, but I've known lots of people over my lifetime where, you'll know them as a certain name. Oh yeah, that's Ant, or
yeah.
And it's like, oh, his real name's Jack or something. But why don't you just call him Jack then? Well, I don't know, really. Just everyone calls him Ant.
Yes, yeah.
But I don't get it. That's your name, but you've chosen to just use a completely different name.
Yeah, it's weird for people, isn't it?
It is strange, yeah.
Really strange. But yeah, sorry, Dave. So yeah, no, the comic book stuff's really good because obviously Batman's such a synonymous superhero, and not just in the comic book superhero world, just worldwide. The symbol of Batman, everyone knows what it is, just like Superman. It's almost up there with Superman, or if it is, it's on the same level, playing field. Because even though we've got this Marvel revival now, and we've got stuff like Spider-Man and that, for me, growing up, Batman and Superman were the superheroes more than anything that I grew up with. So I think that's probably why I'm a bit more of a DC fan, because them two characters were sort of the only ones around when we were younger.
Yeah, I think I'm sure I saw somewhere or heard somewhere. It's really Superman, Batman, and Spider-Man. Those are the most distinctive characters. So
Yes.
forget comic books, just in terms of iconic characters that lots and lots of people know. Those are really the three that you're talking about.
And probably you maybe got the Incredible Hulk as well, just behind Spider-Man or wherever he's in there, because they were the ones, like you say, them four as a kid were the ones, the cartoons and that watched the films, whether they're good or bad. It's all like we've said before, it's all that was available as we were growing up. People are spoilt now with what's around.
Yeah.
But regarding the film, Dave, obviously it was released in 1989, but it was an idea that came sort of inception around 1980 due to the success of like Superman and Superman 2. They decided they wanted to use the same format and mirror basically what had happened in Superman with the format of the film as well. But it sort of had a lot of stops and starts throughout the 80s. At one point, Dave, this is God's honest truth, they'd even cast Bill Murray, or they were going to cast Bill Murray as Batman and Eddie Murphy as Robin for this film. It's just so bizarre. I had to read.
I would quite like to see that.
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm a big fan of Beverly Hills Cop and Eddie Murphy as a kid and that, but I don't know whether he could have stopped from swearing, I think, in that one. But then this film actually wasn't greenlit until the success of Beetlejuice with Tim Burton, and obviously he took with him Michael Keaton. But there was a massive online, well, whatever the online version was in '89, a petition of the comic book fans, 50,000 signatures they got regarding Michael Keaton playing Batman, saying that they didn't want him because they thought it was going to be
pigeons. I think that's what it was in 1989, wasn't it? Didn't have an internet.
Yeah, yogurt cups with a piece of string, something like that. Yeah, but yeah, there was a massive upheaval and uproar regarding Michael Keaton, and what they did was they released towards the end of 1988. They actually released a quick sort of advert teaser trailer to put people's minds at rest, and it sort of eased the thing because they thought he was going to play it very much like Adam West from the 1960s, sort of ham it up and be very slapstick. Even going back to sort of the Superman films with Clark Kent, they thought obviously Batman is a more of a serious character than Clark Kent, so they thought in that respect he would play it sort of quite comical, and it eased everyone's minds really, which is quite a good thing. But I've got to say, Dave, talk about some of the things. The actual film itself was, like, at the time, the fifth highest grossing film of all time. 400 million it took at the box office, and it was nominated for various awards and things like Golden Globes, Saturn Awards, things like that. But Dave, I've got one thing I've really picked out in my sort of film thing I was studying is Jack Nicholson, who obviously plays the Joker, has pulled off what can only be described as a Brando in this one, Dave. Now, we talked about in episode 1 and 2 regarding Marlon Brando and of Superman as well, episode 1 and 2 of the podcast and Superman 1 and 2, that he wasn't in the second one because he had a falling out, but he still made a lot of money, Marlon Brando. Well, Jack Nicholson took it to the next level, and he decided, he had an off-the-clock agreement, what they call it, and basically his contractor specified that he decides what hours he does. He was only going to be there for 3 weeks, but it ended up being like 106 days. But he only got, at the time, he got 600 million for the film, but he also wanted to share. 6 million. Sorry about that. Yeah, he only got the
gross
600 million.
400 million, and he got paid 600.
600. Yeah, sorry, Chris. Yeah, we'll just Jack Nicholson only got paid 6 million, which I know only. I mean, me and yourself never see that probably in our lifetime, but 6 million. But what he did was he did a Brando, and he decided he wanted part of the profits and the gross sort of box office profits, and he earned, they reckon, between 60 to 90 million just off the profits, because it was such a critically acclaimed film worldwide at the box office and that, because no one had really seen anything like this, because it was classed as such a dark comic book film. He basically, and he always says it was his favourite part, and I'm thinking, I'm not surprised, because the money is made
as he dives into his Scrooge McDuck big pile of vault of money there, I love that Joker.
Exactly. I mean, I know we've mentioned like Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson, but you've got like Kim Basinger, Jack Palance, some of the main characters in there, and one of the ones I was quite surprised with Dave is Billy D. Williams. We'll get into that later, who he is, but I don't remember that as a kid, I must admit. But yeah, so, and regarding Batman, they tried to go down the same route as Superman. They looked at a lot of the mainstream actors, action sort of hero actors at the time, like Mel Gibson, Kevin Costner, Tom Selleck, Bill Murray. But one of the ones, then they actually offered the part to Pierce Brosnan. This was obviously before Bond, and he didn't want it. But Ray Liotta was also offered the chance to take up the role, and he didn't even audition for it. He didn't feel it was going anywhere. And he says even to this day he regrets not having a chance to go for it. But Michael Keaton just got... Go on.
That's a terrible career choice, isn't it?
I know.
He must rue that day every day of his life.
Well, even down to like what we were looking at Superman 1 and 2, and like Sly Stallone's going for it, and he's like, there's no way he could have been Superman. But I must admit, looking at the ones who could have gone for it, there's a few names there that probably, I mean, even someone like Tom Selleck, you know, he's a tall guy or whatever, you probably had the frame, not with the moustache. Not the tash. Let me finish. Not the moustache, but you know, someone like that or Harrison Ford, they probably could have pulled it off. Pierce Brosnan would have been good, and that might be one of the reasons he got Bond in, you know, a few years later. But yeah, it's a polarizing role, I think, as we've got older. Batman, it's one of these ones. He's been such good ones. I mean, for me, Christian Bale always stands out as the best one in recent times, or any time really, other than Adam West. It's a love for the slapsticking sort of cabinetness of it. Christian Bale's up there with him, and then in respect to the Joker, obviously it was given to Jack Nicholson, but he was sort of offered the role early 80s. He was always in the thoughts of like the producers and writers it was going to be him. People like Tim Curry, David Bowie, John Lithgow, James Woods all auditioned for the part. And then, but one of the things with Nicholson, going back to him again, he obviously got the part of the Joker. He's one of the riders as well, was he had to have time off when the LA Lakers played basketball so he could go and watch him play. So he absolutely had him off here. But one of the things with this film, which was actually cut right at the end, was Kiefer Sutherland was actually going to be Robin. But because him and Michael Keaton are of the same height, they didn't really think it had much on camera. They wouldn't have been able to pull it off, and they didn't really think the Robin character there was any legs in the script. So the only thing they did was there was a slight cameo from a Robin character when they're going through the Gotham, when the Joker plays that party and he's got acrobats going. One of them's supposed to be Dick Grayson. So you don't ever know that in the film. It's just something they put in there.
Yeah, I guess Keaton's not that tall, is he? You'd have to go with someone like Jimmy Krankie.
Well, Dave, let's just get to that with Michael Keaton's height, because I'll be honest with you, that's in my show notes, shall we say?
Right, okay, fair enough.
But critically, it got a good response. The one thing that people liked is it was the first dark comic book, because most comic books are that way. They're not this sort of camp, colourful on-screen adaptation, whether it be the old Batmans, even the Superman's films that we've reviewed, and the old Spider-Man TV series, the Hulk, they were always very, not tongue-in-cheek, but quite light the way they were filmed, and that's this film, as whatever we give it as a score, was basically the gateway for what everybody sees now when it comes to films and comic book and superhero films, because nobody had the bottle really to make such a dark comic book film, and this, I mean, the actual film itself was the one that opened up the door for the Batman animated series that had massive success with like Mark Hamill as the Joker, and that it wouldn't have even been made if it wasn't for that. So the only thing it's supposed to be filmed in California, but it was all filmed at Pinewood Studios.
It's another one done at Pinewood, isn't it? Yeah,
another one. So film-wise, it's basically, it was a film-wise, it was an era-defining superhero film for a lot of good reasons, to be fair, and it spawned a lot of different things off it. And the whole icon of the Batman sign for this film was something that merchandise-wise just sold bigger than anything they'd ever seen, because that sign was on everything. And I remember that as a kid, having like the figures and the Batmobile, and I had it because of this film. I was like 11 years old when this come out, so it was a real. This come out at the same time as Back to the Future 2 and 3. You were like, it's absolutely loved. There was like 3 great films come out around about the same time, And this always sticks in my mind because I had everything to do. We even had Bob, Joker's sidekick, as one of my figures. He always got beat up by Batman.
Oh, yeah,
I did. I had all of them. And he was actually Jack Nicholson's best friend. He was actually, Nicholson wanted him in the film, otherwise he wasn't doing it.
Oh, right, okay.
That's one of his best friends. But yeah, so that's all I've got on the film stuff, Dave. I think it was interesting reading about this because it's a film that I've said to you, like Superman 1 and 2, great films. But as a kid, watching it again and remembering how much it meant to me as an 11-year-old kid, I just totally forgot. In 30-odd years since then, literally, I didn't realise what it meant to me as a child. And then watching it back again, it all come back to me, different bits of the film, thinking, God, yeah, I had Bob as a figure. I had the Batman, I had the Batmobile, which you forget as you get older.
Yeah. And when we discussed about doing this one, I was a little bit concerned about rewatching it now because it did have a massive impact on me, and I remember playing the game over and over again on my Amiga. It was just massive at the time, wasn't it? And I thought, I haven't seen it for probably a couple of decades, so how's it going to stand up? But should we get into our review?
Yeah, let's go.
Let's do it. Okay, so before we get into the actual plot, I think one of the things I'd absolutely forgotten about was how great the music was.
Yeah.
And straight away you get that Danny Elfman score, which you mentioned the Batman animated series. They just used the same thing for that, didn't they? Yeah, they did. And that atmospheric music that you've got. So things like Superman, Star Wars, the John Williams stuff, that's very rousing. Whereas this is much more gothic, isn't it? Much more dark. But it just plants you in that world straight away, that music. And I still can't quite wrap my head around this is the guy who's the front man for Oingo Boingo. And I always, whenever I see him, I just think Weird Science. Yeah. Did you remember that? And into that, I absolutely loved it. But it's just about the most 80s sounding band that you could ever have out there, and the fact that he produces this score and many scores like it since when he's been working with Tim Burton. I was just one of the first things that jumped out at me. It was like, this is just brilliant. And again, you kind of know it now. You know the music, but it's almost subliminal. Yeah. And I again, just rewatching it then, that was the first thing that jumped out at me.
Well, like in the respect to the music, obviously, I remember the Prince sort of soundtrack that come with it, Batman, and he was like, Vicky Vale, I like Batman and all that stuff. And I remember it as a kid.
The Batman dance.
Yeah, the Batman dance, all that campness. But Tim Burton absolutely hated it. He didn't hate the music, but he just thought that it was outdated with the film. And
I think it was forced on him pretty much, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, he was saying that. They wanted Prince for sort of like the action stuff and the sort of Joker, sort of daft, stupid scenes that he was doing, which he did fit really for what Jack Nicholson was doing. But the actual love scenes, they wanted Michael Jackson to do a song. And I don't think that ever even come to sort of fruition really. But it's one of these things where Burton was not happy with that, and he actually said, because it was all the sound snippets were done in the UK, he said it's not anything on the UK soundings, he said, but it just like they didn't care. He said he was never happy with the music.
I saw that, yeah. I think that was an Elfman quote, wasn't it? As opposed to Burton. Yeah, he wasn't that impressed by it.
No, which I thought it was great. I thought there's like a suspense to all the music and like a dark undertone, which is hard to describe, but when you listen to it, I thought it sits well with the film, to be honest. I thought it was pretty good. But yeah, it all sets it up nicely, and you could tell the tone of the difference in like 7-8 years between something like Superman to Batman, Superman 2, 81, and we had all the campness of Superman 3 and 4, and then you get this, and this was for me, I honestly think, in my head, what a comic book sort of adaptation of a superhero film should be.
Yeah, it's pretty. Certainly, the opening, I'm going to say, I think is pretty perfect. And, it is set in that kind of... This is like an 80s hangover, isn't it? So after all that excess of the 80s, and this is the real come down. But it is kind of set in that... It's not set to be 1930s, 1940s, but it does kind of feel like that, in terms of the overall feel of it. And so when they start off, you go straight into the mugging scene, and I guess I was watching this and I was thinking, oh, this is going to be your usual kind of origin story. And so when the film opens and you see, someone's coming home from the movies, a couple and a small child, you think, oh, that's young Bruce. His parents are going to be killed, and then we're going to see the advent. Batman's going to don his cape and whatever. But no, and I don't know whether they intentionally gave that misdirection. But this is set, let me say in inverted commas, present day, isn't it? So the Batman already exists, and they get mugged. Now I did kind of think, well, surely Batman was watching this. Like, how long was he watching this before he decided to rough up these muggers? So
I thought, Dave, I must admit, that whole first scene, I was very, very impressed with what they did to make Gotham look this seedy, dark, sort of dirty. You know what it reminded me of? In Back to the Future, when Biff goes back and changes the almanac and changes the timeline, and you go back to Hill Valley and it's an absolute mess in it, and you've got it's just dirty and grungy and dingy. And it just reminded me of that. I don't know why. It just sat with me well, and I thought, and I must admit though, how cliche can you get? And I did think like you, I thought it was Bruce Wayne, because I'm thinking this is obviously where The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises, where Batman Begins, it was this first bit, I thought, oh, this is obviously where, Christopher Nolan and that have taken this from because of this film. But I forgot. I thought he was Bruce Wayne like you. I genuinely did.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? We probably watched this movie God knows how many times as kids, and we just completely forgot, how the film started. But yeah, so it starts off, this couple get mugged. The muggers are off counting their takings, and they're kind of having this discussion about this rumor of the Batman, and kind of telling each other scare stories, really.
Yeah.
And so Batman actually, he roughs them up a bit, doesn't he? And they, you get that line, don't you? That what are you? In that really high pitched way, which as soon as he said it, I was like, oh God, I remember that.
Yeah.
And he basically, you get the impression at this point in the film, the Batman is a bit of a rumor to everyone. And so it's kind of early in his Batman career, I guess. And at this point, he's just looking for a bit of PR, so he's like, tell your friends about me and stuff. So, doesn't kill him off as everyone assumes that he is going to do. So really interesting start. And like I say, I was expecting that usual, almost like the Superman beats, so where we had like 50 minutes of him growing up before we ever saw Superman. Now this is straight in there, a mugging, and then we see a bit of Batman.
Well, a couple of things on that scene that I've picked up, and I mean, I'm obviously becoming Mr. Critical when it comes to these things, but the guy who says, "What are you?" He's Christopher Fairbank, who's in he is in my favourite programme of all time. He's Moxie out of Our Vida's Own Pet. It becomes quite apparent that it was filmed in the UK because there's various little cameos of English actors you see, and that scene was great. But one thing I had a problem with, Dave, is he didn't give the money back to that family. He just basically went, "Tell everyone I'm Batman," and just goes, and then they're sort of.
Well, again, I was thinking prevention would have been the key thing there. So he was obviously watching them, so he could have probably stopped the mugging. It's like, no, just move along, enjoy your night, family. No. He let the mugging take place, and then trousered the cash.
It was Superman 2 when Clark gets hit by the cows.
Yeah.
Sorry, pal, you'll have to fix it yourself. You really don't. And I know, I understand it's this fear element of it's Batman and there. I mean, what was a bit though was like theatre was obviously he's called Nick in the actual film, Christopher Fairbank. The way he's like supposedly collapses over the head, he's looking over the heads for the Batman, and then he just sort of collapses back like he's fainted or something. And I'm thinking he wasn't that scary, you know what I mean? It's like. I get what they were getting, but it just made me laugh because I thought, oh no, you know, please don't carry on like this. I'll be picking holes in the whole film because I remember that scene as a kid, and I must admit, I thought he actually said as a kid, "Who are you?" And he was like, "I'm Batman," and it wasn't. I was totally wrong. So it's strange. You don't remember things properly as you get older. Really strange, but it set the tone, and I thought the whole Gotham thing, as I've said just before, was brilliant. I just thought the way they used the studio and the cars and the people, it was all put together and choreographed really well.
And I guess that's why they use Pinewood over and over, isn't it? You know, they've just got those big studios and can just build these worlds inside them. And you're right, it set that scene beautifully. Yeah,
it did really well. And then obviously, one thing I did say in the makeup, and I know you have said this, I'll let you jump on it, but was Harvey Dent. I didn't even know Harvey Dent was in this film.
I didn't at all, and he popped up on the screen. I thought, oh, crikey, that's Lando Calrissian.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought.
What's he doing in there? And I finished watching the movie, and I still wondered, what's Billy D. Williams doing in there? But I guess I think the story goes, doesn't it, that he was expecting to be in subsequent films. So this actual story, I mean, it didn't really add anything, him being in it, did it? But I guess if he thought, you know, in a sequel or something, he was going to be Two-Face, that would have made more sense. But yeah, it's just weird, isn't it? Again, one of those things you just kind of forget.
And it's like you said, you straight into the story of like they're trying to have this 200-year celebration, and he's trying to give this sort of speech to everyone, and nobody wants to go because of that. These sort of gangsters are running everything, and I don't know. I think it might have worked if he'd been in subsequent ones, but because they flipped and flopped after the second Batman, and they changed it, didn't they? So see Val Kilmer and George Clooney and stuff. He could never be recast because they totally changed all the cast in the later films, didn't they? Really, so it didn't really make much sense. And Harvey Dent, obviously in the Christian Bale stuff, Harvey Dent was underused, I thought, in The Dark Knight as well. He was only in at the end. So it's a shame. I know we had sort of Tommy Lee Jones in the later ones as Two-Face, but it could have been a really, really clever story arc if they'd carried on with that, or even used him at some point, especially with the chemicals that had sort of affected the Joker. It would have been an interesting story.
Yeah, I think in Dark Knight he's just completely overshadowed by the Joker, isn't he?
Yeah,
and rightly so, I think. But yeah, no. So, but anyway, I suppose for this film, it's more of a name drop, isn't it, than being a kind of pivotal character in there.
Yeah, true.
But we get introduced. So Jack Napier is looking on, watching the speech, isn't he, with old Jerry Hall?
Yeah.
And Jack, and so this is one of the things I think made up for the movie. So you don't really know what the Joker's origin is. So they told it, as if it's fact on the movie, but in the comics that doesn't really exist. But they make up a name for him, so he's Jack Napier. You got an actor called Jack Nicholson. All right, well, that's Jack Napier. Yeah, that's close enough. So he gets set up for a job to go and do a job at Axis Chemicals, doesn't he? And Bruce kind of sees that this is all going down. This is all fairly early on in the film, so he's got some cameras. He's watching Commissioner Gordon talking about this at his party, and you get kind of he plays a decent enough gangster, I guess, doesn't he, old Jack Nicholson? And you get this sense that this Eggharts is a bit of a dirty cop, isn't he? So Jack Nicholson's trying to bribe him as well, and this is all kind of just, you've got no idea. You're just immersed in this kind of gangster world at this point. You're not really seeing anything that's going on with Batman. But Eckhart, the dirty cop, kind of gets a tip off, about the Axis Chemicals job, and he tells his men to shoot to kill. And at this point, I'm kind of wondering, I have no idea what's going on here. what's actually happening here? But it kind of becomes clear, doesn't it, that the old crime boss, he wants Jack dead. And again, at this point, I didn't really know why. We sort of find out a little bit after.
Yeah, and what I find quite funny was, and obviously, what I find, I said this to you last week, and with Tim Burton, he's never a comic book fan at all, and he actually says that. And Michael Keaton wasn't. I know it doesn't matter with Michael Keaton as such as Batman, but you can tell, as I said last week, when somebody is a comic book fan or gets it. And there was a little scene there with that copper, the Eckhart, where they go to Axis Chemicals and he starts handing out wanted posters like we're in the OK Corral for like the 1800s or something. This is the man you're looking for. It's like, well, the coppers are not going to have these in their hand when they've got a gun and go, hang on a minute, is that him up there?
Just hold it up next to someone's face.
It just didn't make any sense. Instead of him just showing a generic picture. And I know it's supposed to be, that their take on it, but I just thought that was lost a bit on that scene because it's setting up for what is the first sort of interaction between the Jack Napier and how he becomes the Joker. And it's a good scene, but this reminded me last week of The Losers because the Joker's just going higher and higher and higher up. And then we've got this whole thing, haven't we, where they're chasing him and they're chasing around the chemical thing, and he's just pressing random stuff. Jack Napier at this time, he just starts pressing stuff like he knows what he's doing and turning levers and whacking chemicals on the floor, and I'm like, it doesn't make any sense what he's actually doing here, and he's just getting, and then he gets to the top of the building and then he just says, as he looks up, he goes, exit. And I'm like thinking, where's he going here? He's like at the top of the actual chemical plant. Where is he actually going to exit? You know what I mean? I know. It was just daft little things that I always seem to pick up on, that just, like you say, your mind tries to compute it, thinking, as I've got older, as a kid, he never would have crossed my mind, this sort of thing. But as I've got older, I'm thinking, that just doesn't make any logical sense why he's going higher and higher up this chemical plant. And where's the exit? It's just weird. It was just some daft little things. It sort of took me away from it because I was then looking at it thinking, that makes absolutely, I don't understand that at all.
There's a little sign that says diving board over here into the chemical drum.
Beware of chemicals. Yeah. No bombing, just no bombing or petting as you dive into the chemicals. Yeah. So it was just a weird little scene, I thought, the whole thing, because it was obviously a plot-driven thing to get him to become who he becomes, obviously, is the Joker, but it was just like a throwaway scene, I thought, because he'd become very fearful of the cops all of a sudden, where he just didn't really care about him in the scene before and was prepared to sort of take him out. So I don't know.
Yes, but you've got this shootout, haven't you, between the gangsters and the cops, and then Batman sort of inserts himself in the middle of that as well. And you think Jack's you think he's gonna get away, and then he takes a pot shot at Batman, and he deflects it off Bruce Lee style, deflects the bullet off, and then it actually smashes some glass or something, doesn't it? Into Jack's face. So his face kind of gets cut up already, and then he ends up dramatically kind of going to fall off the edge, sort of into this chemical drum. But Batman actually reaches out and he sort of grabs him. But I didn't really get the sense that he tried that hard to hold on to him.
No.
He sort of didn't really look like he was putting his back into it. It was just like, all right, kind of giving a half-hearted thing. Oh no, there we go. Yeah, he's gone.
Yeah,
couldn't have done anything about it, lads. he's gone down there.
Well, I thought just slightly before that there was a great, for me, as the film and our review goes on, And I remember this as a kid, like as a young sort of 11-year-old kid, that I remember how important and how much Jack Nicholson was to this film. And like we said about Brando and Hackman being people who were billed as the sort of main artists and main stars of the Superman film. And I'm sorry to keep going back to that, but it very much does mirror this. Mm-hmm. Jack Nicholson, for me, earned his money and some. And I think if they'd had anyone else as the Joker, the film wouldn't have been what it was. And he says a line, he shoots Eggart, doesn't he, or whatever he's called, the cop. And he says a line just when he says, think about the future, which is obviously said to him, but it's the way he delivers it. And then he sort of shoots him dead, doesn't he, and then legs it. And that's obviously just before he falls into the chemicals.
Doesn't he say something earlier? So when he's trying to bribe him, isn't Eggart? I mean, he's a big bloke, isn't he? Obviously, he needs to get on the Stairmaster a little bit. So I'm sure, isn't he eating some donuts or something like that? And there's some back and forth. Yeah, there's some back and forth about thinking about the future, and so that was the prelude, I guess, to that line where he shoots him. And you're right, the way he delivered that was brilliant. You know, that think about the future. Yeah, it was really good. You're right.
Yeah, I mean, I've made a note of some of the lines because I just thought this is where, like, I was a big fan as a kid of, I think it was Cesar Romano, who was the actual Joker from the 60s, and I used to love him as a kid because that stupid maniacal daft laugh he used to have, and I thought Nicholson was this was the start of this Joker origin that was coming into it, and I just, from the minute he went in the acid bath, and all that, and obviously you think he's dead, and we know his hand then comes up, which I must admit is very much like some sort of horror film. It just set a tone for me of who he was, you know, and I loved it. I absolutely loved Nicholson's performance in this. Even up to this point, he's very, very clever. And that sort of New York accent that he's got, he plays it off really well. The tough guy thing, he's just like a natural tough guy, isn't he, in all these films. He's always got that, even when he's playing a comedy straight guy, he's always got that, like a bit like De Niro, when he's always that little edge to what he's doing. And I just thought his delivery of the way even the sort of nonsensical chit-chat in the film was really good.
Yeah, it's some, I mean, there are some great one-liners in there, but it's just, in his delivery, a lot of it it's just sinister, isn't it? And it is great. I mean, when you know, you see the hand coming up, and when he's getting he's getting his face redecorated by the plastic surgeon, who, you know, is making all the excuses in the world for, you know, look at all the tools I've got to work with, which I don't think is a great, when you've messed up someone's face or their face is messed up, you know, you might have done your best job. It's not, I wouldn't go making excuses.
Yeah.
Your face is messed up, but look at the tools I've got to work with. But you start to see, don't you, that kind of, you don't see that they tease the Joker's face, so we don't see it for a little while, but, you know, we get that kind of hysterical laughter, don't we? And I think it's great the way they tease us with actually seeing the Joker there. Yeah, I agree. Great inception of the character. And I think as well, I couldn't remember it, Dave, and sorry to cut across you. I couldn't remember. I actually was thinking, does he actually kill the Doctor? But he obviously doesn't. But I don't think he does. I think you just see him walk off, you know, in a kind of menacing way. But no, I don't think he does kill him. But I mean, the next you do see him. He introduces himself to the crime boss, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Who pretends, you know, that he's glad to see Jack is alive, and that's when we first see, you know, he introduces himself, he whips off his hat, and he's like, you know, it's the Joker, and that's, I guess we see a little bit of that Cesar Romero Joker, you know, the one from the 60s Batman, because it's very much like that, isn't it? We get the laughing, and he's just shooting away at this crime boss, and just, you know, he's got the gun behind his back and shooting him and all sorts, you know. So
yeah.
But that was the first time we really see, right, okay, this is the Joker now.
Yeah, and I must correct myself. I said Caesar Ramon, he's bloody Caesar Romero. Yeah, but he's very much modelled himself on that character as well. I know the way he looks, the green hair, the whole thing with the nerves and the smile. It's just brilliant, Dave. I think, and obviously you can deliver the line that he says after he kills the crime boss, because it's.
I mean, I couldn't possibly do it justice, but you've got the blood spattered newspaper, haven't you? So it's the front page around Batman, and he just says that, "Wait till they get a load of me."
Yeah,
and it's just like, again, when I was rewatching it was just like, it's just so good.
Yeah, it was so good. And it's almost sort of pop culture, that line, because it was, as a kid, it was all stuff we used to quote at school, these sort of lines out of that film, because there was nothing out there at the time that was even close to it.
Yeah.
And again, Nicholson, just stealing scenes, as they say. Brilliant, really good. Now, obviously, I know the next scene you've got is, from there, is this Bruce Wayne love triangle, which I have a slight problem with Vicky Vale, Dave, because there's no reasoning for her to be at his house, and she just says to that Knox, don't she, use the reporter, the sort of sleazy reporter, I've got a date, and she's there. But there's not actually any...
Is that Knox the most desperate bloke you've ever met in your life? Well, obviously we haven't met him, but no, I don't even know if it's sleazy. Just give him a scratching post or something. He just like, I really like this Bruce Wayne. Oh man, you want to go out with me? Yeah. It's just it was a bit bizarre. I thought, he was just it's just quite pathetic.
Yeah, it's a strange character all the way through, because you sort of think, is he a goodie? Is he working, for the sort of crime bosses, the Joker? He was just like this bumbling sleazeball, wasn't he? Like, he was just everything that Bruce Wayne... I suppose that's what he was about. He has affection for Vicky Vale, but he was everything that Bruce Wayne isn't. So it was just... Yeah, I'm with you on that.
I suppose if I mean, I guess that he's the foil, isn't he, to make Batman or Bruce Wayne look cooler and laid back. And I suppose if you look at it that way, he probably did a good job of being a desperate sleazebag.
well, can I just pick two holes out of this the scene though? It's the film for me at this point. There was certain things started to sort of unravel slightly, and I started to feel a bit claustrophobic watching the film, because I was thinking, I know it sounds stupid this day, but I was thinking, I can tell it's been filmed in a studio on a lot. I know that makes thinking, but there's no location shots. It's all done. Obviously, Gotham's supposed to be this dingy, dark sort of town, but like, you go to Wayne Manor, and I'm thinking, you can tell this is filmed in the UK, because outside Wayne Manor, there's a Vauxhall Cavalier at the front door. And I'm thinking,
really?
Yeah, I'm
thinking,
say that. Surely, I know he's got a Rolls Royce later on at the end of the film, and Alfred picks, Kim Basinger up, like Vicky Vale up, but it's a Vauxhall Cavalier outside the house. I'm thinking,
if only it could have been a Capri.
Exactly, Ford Escort XR3 or something. But I'm looking at it, and then I must admit, Dave, the one issue I've got with Michael Keaton as Batman is the hair. What is going on with that hair? It's an absolute microphone head, to say the least. I was absolutely in stitches. And when he's had this scene where he's obviously supposed to have slept with like Vicky Vale and stuff, and they wake up, and I understand you have bedhead and that, but he just looks like he's got static. It just looks like a microphone. And I'm like Batman never ever had hair like that. He had a slick side parting or something. You know what I mean? It was just... Absolutely. I don't know. I just kept looking at every scene thinking, he's almost in Marouane Fellaini style of an afro. It was just getting bigger by the scene. Obviously, I really had an issue with it. I don't know why. It just really tickled me, honestly. I just thought, no.
It wasn't quite slick enough, was it? I mean, I remember there being this kind of outcry. I've no idea how. I knew because there was no internet. It must have been on the news or something like that. But I remember, people weren't happy. But I thought generally, certainly when Vicky Vale is looking for Bruce Wayne at the party, and he sort of says, "Oh, I don't know where he is." I thought he played that quite well, apart from the hair. But he played that kind of laid back, chilled out bloke. Even though he's this hugely wealthy guy, I thought he delivered that really well. But also, I guess what I noticed, and I don't know if it's Michael Keaton or if that was just the style of suits in the 80s, but he looks like he's wearing his dad's suit. It just looks too big for him. So he's like,
Dave, he's just a midget. Let's get this is.
Yeah, but they do smaller suits.
Oh, Dave, I have not watched a superhero film with the smallest guy ever. There's a scene later on when he's running with Kim Basinger, and I don't think she's got heels on, and she's still bigger than him, and he's supposed to be Batman. This all conquering, he's supposed to be like 6'1", 6'2" in his superhero, and he's like. Honestly, there's a scene when he's running, Dave, and he runs off in Gotham, and he just looks like a little midget. And I don't remember, but I know that was one of the issues with him, casting him as Batman because of his height. And I know people like Stallone and that are probably not much taller, but the way he filmed things around like a Stallone or a Van Damme and that, you don't get that impression that they're that they're smaller than average in height. But with Michael Keaton, oh boy, do you get that. I mean, they're that desperate to make him taller. Them ears on his batsuit are about 6 inches long. He'll have someone's eye out with them, Dave. They're absolutely massive.
Yeah.
I was absolutely wetting myself because I had to keep rewinding the video of him running down the street. I was like, oh, come on,
There's a different bit which really jars with me, but I won't spoil it until we get there. But so essentially, Vicky Vale, she's looking for Bruce Wayne. Like I say, he plays this suave, kind of chilled out philanthropist quite well, I think. But they go out on a date, don't they? In this hugely elaborate dinner, and they're at opposite ends of this huge table. But then they, it's very formal kind of occasion. But then, they end up in Alfred's kitchen or something, don't they? And then, they get to know each other a bit better, and Alfred's there giving some quips and what have you. So, and then he gets Kim really quite drunk, and they have some mummy and daddy time.
I must admit, I don't remember that. I was started thinking, are we watching 9.5 Weeks here? Because it was like he got her drunk, and then sort of like they're going up the stairs, and I'm thinking, I'm pretty sure Christopher Reeve wouldn't have done this. So what's going on? I was
a little bit uncomfortable with how drunk she was. How drunk she was acting there, but it is what it is.
Well, I must admit though, Dave, you get the impression that he's been the gentleman and he's sort of left her to it, and she's laying in the bed because he wakes up on the sofa, but then later on in the film, she says to him, "Well, you slept with me." I'm still thinking, well, why was he on the sofa the next morning? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's weird, isn't it?
But then, so after that night, though, he says, I've got to go out of town. But she rumbles him quite early on, doesn't she? She follows him.
Yeah.
And he's, so she sees him placing the flowers down. And we know it's where her mum and dad, where his parents were killed. But at the time, she doesn't know that. So then I guess we move to the crime gang takeover, don't we? So
yeah.
We switch back again to the Joker's thread there, and he's I do like the way, I don't think we ever saw this in the Batman 66. We kind of think the Joker is a guy with the white makeup on. Yeah. Whereas, this was the first time you saw it. It was, Jack Nicholson had just a white face, and he painted on skin-coloured makeup on top of him. So, you know, we get that line about, you know, what you're grinning for or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was quite cool. And then we get the Joker taking out one of the head crime bosses, who's quite vocal with one of his gag electrodes in the hand kind of thing.
Yeah,
and then all the crime bosses sort of fall into line really quite quickly, don't they?
Yeah, really quick. I mean, I thought that scene was very much like The Dark Knight. You know, when obviously the Joker comes in and he gets that guy with a pen on and stuff, and it was obviously that's where Christopher Nolan has taken the adaptation.
I think so. Yeah.
Obviously, this was the original, but I did like that scene because this is where this sort of the TV series side come to it, but then it's ramped up to like 10. Because in the TV series, he probably would have electrocuted him. The guy would have hit the deck, and then he would have been all right in the next scene or something. But he would have been captured, or you know, he'd be in this one. Oh no, we were going full, you know, melting his whole body to smithereens. So he sort of like it give that sort of nasty side to the Joker, where it's sort of split personality to who he is and.
Yeah, and this so it was a 15, isn't it? In the UK at least, and is that I always get confused. Is that an R rating, a 15? So an
I don't know.
X is a.
It must be
18 and R is a 15. So in the UK it's a 15, and it's for things like this, isn't it? Which separate it. I mean, okay, he shot the crime boss before, but. You know, that happens in Avengers and stuff, doesn't it? So it was really things like this where he just absolutely fries that bloke. So you can just see essentially a charred skeleton at the end of it.
Yeah. And I thought it was a good scene. I thought that, again, I know it's not synonymous in sort of in the cinema world. If you say Batman, there's certain scenes you remember, like the one where he says, you know, I'm Batman, and I'll wait until they get a load of me and stuff. And these other lines, obviously, Jack Nicholson delivers that actually steal the film. But this was another one of them little scenes that just sets up that thing where this guy isn't messing around. You know, he genuinely he's having a joke with everyone, but it's basically if you don't take his word for it and go with him, you're getting taken out. And it was good. Yeah. It's good. It's good for what it was, because you never saw that sort of thing in. I can only go off the Superman things because there was nothing Superman. I mean, General Zod probably would have ended up with being tied up in a bit of maybe some rose petal handcuffs or something, or you know, they threw a bit of a plastic thing on him like they did at the end of Superman 2. So this, for an actual superhero comic book based film, was out of the norm, and it set it aside, I thought.
Yeah, and they followed that up, didn't they? With so the crime bosses seem to fall in line, but they're outside the courthouse, and then you sort of see, you know, Bruce Wayne's there. You've got Vicky Vale looking at Bruce Wayne. The journalists are all interviewing the crime bosses, and then you get these mimes sort of appearing there, and there was one bloke. And he's just a nobody, I guess. But he jumped out at me. He's the captain from Red Dwarf.
yeah, he is. I saw that as well.
Yeah. Isn't it funny? He was probably just, you know, essentially a little more than an extra at the time. But so he was one of Joker's goons, and then they kind of open fire. Oh no, sorry. Before they open fire, he throws the quill into the crime boss's throat, doesn't he? And again, you know, that's another data point for us to say, oh, hang about, this is a bit different. This is quite a vicious Joker. But what I noticed is when he throws the quill in the guy's throat, and everyone's kind of screaming, and you can hear that, you can see the police in the background just stood there doing absolutely nothing. They just literally stood there. And then it's after when they open fire, then suddenly they spring into action. But I thought that was a bit strange. I have a bit of a reaction.
I actually made a note of that, but I also find it bizarre, like you were saying earlier, regarding when Batman picks his fights, because obviously we know he's Bruce Wayne and stuff, but surely, if he's that much of a crime fighter, he would have done something. And he just sort of meanders over, walked past the crowd. Obviously, he's trying to depict that he's Batman because he's the only person there who's not dropped to the knees and was cowering. He's the one who isn't scared, and he realises who the Joker is at this point. But then there's he gets shot in the arm, and it literally, obviously, we know in the next scene as he goes off, the Joker goes off, and he sort of has this sort of altercation with Vicky Vale and looks at her and blankly and walks off. And the next scene is he's back at Wayne Mansion and Alfred's there, and he sort of puts his finger through the hole of the jacket. But it's like there's no mention of why this shot just went through his coat. It obviously didn't shoot him or make him bleed, but it was like I thought there might have been more of a thing. Like he would have had more scope and depth if he'd actually been shot, but he didn't feel it. You know, because he knew who this guy was, because he was like the guy who'd obviously killed his parents and stuff. Do you understand what I mean? That was like where the penny dropped for him in that scene, that who this guy was. And obviously he realised it was the guy he dropped into the acid as well. But it was all coming together, who he was. And he said, didn't he, like to Alfred, Jack Napier's still alive. But
I think they tried too hard, didn't they, to just ram home the message that the pennies dropped. Yeah. But it didn't really make sense that he's just stood there looking, perplexed.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I guess, though, and Bruce is properly rumbled there, isn't he? Like you say, so he looks at Vicky Vale. Oh, yeah, had a great night. Told you I was out of town. Oops. So that seems to be dead in the water right now. And then, so you get Joker. He's cutting up his little pictures, isn't he? And then again, another great line which I remembered. So he goes, "Stop the press! Who's that?" It's Vicky Vale. So he obviously has eyes for Kim Basinger, and he starts putting this kind of idea to try and go and woo her. And then we cut. And again, this is a little bit... We sort of flip-flop, don't we, between the dark gothic side of this movie, and then there are still some kind of roots in Batman 66, but we go to like the TV anchors, don't we? And suddenly the female TV anchor just starts laughing hysterically. And then we get Joker cutting across the airwaves, and he basically tells us about this Smilex. So basically, this is the gag, that you might have these products already, so these cosmetic products, and they'll just basically make you laugh to death and leave you with a Joker-style expression on your face. So as the story goes on with these particular TV anchors, we see that it nosedives pretty quickly, doesn't it? From when they announced this, we see them a scene or two later, and they've got pimples, they've got the hairs everywhere, unstyled. They don't look like they've had a wash in about a year. Yeah. It doesn't really make much sense, does it? Because obviously he's saying that they can't touch any of these things, but when they actually get to the explanation of what's causing this, it's just 3 products put together. And they go lipstick, something else, and it's very toxic when it's mixed. I'm thinking surely someone down the line would have noticed this. I had an issue with this scene because I just thought, I understand if he'd used the same chemicals that had actually made him the Joker and sort of made his skin white and all that, fine. But it was just like he'd done a bit of an A-team and pulled 3 things out of his pocket and gone, hang on, oh yeah, that'll do it. That'll give him the same. Just that bit didn't settle. It didn't settle well with me at all, Dave. I made notes of it here thinking that just makes no logical sense to me at all. Yeah, so... But then we get Vicky. She thinks that she's going on a date with Bruce Wayne, doesn't she? And I couldn't work out. I suppose I could have rewound it, but was it the library that they went
museum?
To?
It was the museum once.
Okay.
Well, no, it's not a museum. It's an art gallery.
Art gallery.
They start destroying all the pictures, don't they, when they enter it and stuff?
Yeah. So I mean, obviously they start start doing that to all the pictures and whatever. But I could have swore I heard library, and I was like, that's a bit strange. But okay,
maybe it is. So, maybe it was, Dave. Yeah, you might be right.
No, I think art gallery makes much more sense for what they're in there.
Yeah.
For, but she gets a little present there, which looks like it's crayoned in by a 6-year-old. Put this over your face kind of thing. And so she puts the old gas mask on, but only when she sees the gas kind of coming in and everyone's sort of passing out with the old purple gas, and then again we get that great line, don't we? So Joker bursts in there with his beret on, and he's like, "Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds." And that's when we get the Prince music, isn't it? Which again, I just, as soon as it started playing, I was like, "Oh yeah, I remember that now."
Yeah, because I've actually got the scene on now. I know I say this every week, but I do sort of try and run the scene as we're talking. Mm-hmm. And what I liked about this, though, Dave, this was pretty much a homage to the 60s Joker. Yeah. If anyone, I mean, obviously, if you've never watched the 60s Adam West, Burt Ward, Batman and Robin, series, this is very much how the Joker is portrayed in it. He's dressed very colourfully because he's got the actual suit on from the 60s, and then his henchmen come in, and one of them's even got like a real pink broad toolbox, which is Joker colours, and he's got the purple suit on with that sort of over-the-top beret style hat backwards, so it's a bit like something you'd see now down in London or something. It's really over the top, isn't it? You know what I mean? Like the way everything is, and they're throwing paint, and the way he's dressed here is how I envisioned the Joker when I used to watch it as a kid. And I thought he was good. And again, he's show stealing, again, scene stealing, Jack Nicholson. He's such a good actor.
Yeah, but I couldn't make my mind up. I mean, I'd remembered the music, and it is kind of iconic, and I like how he's trying to mimic one of the statues, one of the little cherubs there, and he's kind of got his leg up in the air and arm out in front. But where his goons are throwing paint on the paintings, there's one where the goon sort of puts both arms above his head like he's a ballerina or something, and then sort of tiptoes up to the painting and then throws some paint on it. And it's just like, what are you doing? Like, I appreciate you need a paying gig, right? So, in the wanted ads, you've got, Joker goon, all right, need to pay the mortgage. So I appreciate you taking the job. But, he's gone above and beyond there. So for me, he himself isn't the Joker. He isn't mad as a box of frogs. So him behaving like that, I just thought it was proper Batman 66 stuff, and it just jarred with me a little bit because I was loving the kind of dark gothic side of it so much.
Yeah, I suppose I mean, the only thing I picked up on that scene, and I know exactly what you mean, is one of the goons, he's over smiling, but he hasn't got the Joker's smile. I think it would have had more. Yeah, I get what you mean, because I remember watching it thinking, why is that guy just smiling? It's like the Joker said to him, you've got to smile. I know it's a film and it's artistic license. We always say this, but it was just one of the daft little things where even I was thinking, that little bit, it was something to do with one of the statues, the way I think it was when he was painting the statue, the guy, and he put like the green hair on the statue.
Yeah.
And I thought, why is he smiling? But other than that, I did enjoy the scene. So obviously, because it was just a homage to that colourful, over-the-top campness, I think. This was the only time in the film where Nicholson played the Joker as it was sort of 20 years earlier or 30 years earlier.
Yeah, yeah. And then, so we flip-flop, don't we, again? So going from that just over-the-top silliness, when he's actually chatting to Vicky Vale, and you get to see... what is it? The Jerry Hall character. He says, you know, she was just a sketch, and so she's obviously had her face disfigured and what have you. And so Vicky Vale throws a bit of water on him, doesn't she? And he sort of plays up as if he's the Wicked Witch of the West, and he's like, I'm melting, and then he's turning around, boo. I just thought that whole interaction between Jack Nicholson and Kim Basinger there, he was so menacing, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And again, I jumped over it there, but what is it he says, that line? I can't remember exactly what he says, and then she says, "You must be joking." he goes, "Do I look like I'm joking?" The top half of his face is very, very serious, but he's still got this big old grin there.
Yeah, and again, and these are the scenes, Dave, that as a kid I remember from the film. There's a lot of things I forgot as we walked through this film and reviewed it, but these are things that, like, you've probably had it in your mind. You have little cue parts of the film because that one's so it's leading into something else, and that scene for me always leads into the fact that we're going to see the Batmobile. We have this whole bit of a thing where Batman rescues her, and I still don't understand why he's trying to escape from the Joker's goons, because he's got like this car that's impenetrable, and he's just, no one's even had the better of him.
Take him out.
Yeah, just take him out. But then we get, which I thought was funny, is you get the old classic. Totally doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But as you always say, and you're right, it just is in the film because it has to go with the story. Why is there a tractor going across the road, just dumping stuff, blocking traffic off, which stops Batman from driving? And this is where I'm like, this is the scene, Dave, when Michael Keaton gets on the Batmobile and runs off in the Batsuit like he's Del Boy at that, and he's got a fancy dress outfit on because he looks like about 3 inches smaller than Vicky Vale, even with the 6-inch ear, bat tips that he's got on, and it just makes no sense whatsoever because he just looks totally. At this point, he's got away with being Batman, but as soon as I saw that scene and he's running, I was absolutely crying, laughing, because I just thought, I'm watching it now, and you get this sort of thing where he takes her above the ground and he takes her up, he puts his clip on her with a wire, and she flies up into the air, and then he sort of says so, which is just, again, I know it's a comic book adaptation, but he just says to her, like, hold this, otherwise you're going to, you better keep hold of this, and just lets her fly up in the air like she knows what she's doing, and she ends up going one way and he goes the other, and we have this fight thing where he beats a couple of them up, and then they shoot him, don't they? And there's a good line in that where, like what you said, which sort of makes sense because there's no real sense of what people think of who he is. Is he a superhero? Is he human? And they actually say, don't they, he's human at that point, where that Bob shoots him.
Oh, yeah, after they shoot
and I thought
him,
that stands in with what you said, but there's no explanation of that. Maybe if the press had said, like, Vicky Vale or Knox had said, is he human? Is he a super? Because obviously in this world, you've got Superman supposedly running parallel. So sort of having these supernatural, superhuman heroes or people isn't out of the ordinary. So I understand why it was there, but it wasn't. There was no depth to why that line was in, which is a shame, really.
Yeah, I mean, I just took it as it's almost like the boogeyman, isn't it? He's this myth. So I don't particularly think of this as being connected up with that Superman universe at this point. Just it's a standalone thing, but you've got this mysticism around him, and all of these stories that people tell each other. That's how I'd interpreted it. And then, like I say, they shot him and sort of said, "Oh, he's human," but he kind of springs back into life, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does.
Takes these guys out, and you get one of the goons. They all approach him one at a time, don't they?
Yeah.
And one of them's got the old swords, and he looks quite handy with the swords. And I just thought, when he was doing that, Indiana Jones, he's just going to shooting him.
Yeah. And there's a line. Yeah, sorry, go on. Sorry.
No, go on.
No, because there's a line just before that with that Bob, the main henchman of the Joker, just says to him, obviously he said, as I've already gone off on a tangent about, he's human and that, he just says to the two henchmen, check his wallet. He's like, what?
Yeah. That's a mile the bat suit.
He's wearing an armour suit. He's a man of mystery. He's not going to have his passport or his wallet or his driving licence there. Is he? Come on. It's just like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
But then he does kick the guy. He does a top front kick, doesn't he? The guy with the swords. It's a belting kick, actually, I must admit.
Yeah. And so he takes him out, and so anyway, they jet off, don't they, in the old Batmobile, and he takes her to the Batcave, and again, it's one of these where it was the same in Batman 66, but surely she recognises the route to Wayne Manor. I know it's dark, but these roads kind of look familiar.
Yeah.
So, but they end up in the old Batcave.
Well. What's funny is, Dave, this is the only time when you sort of get that sort of. It's where Christian Bale decided to drop the tone of his voice. Now, Christian Bale went like that when he was talking, but you get the idea that Keaton's trying to drop the tone of his voice. But when sort of Kim Basinger's in the Batcave and in the car, the Batmobile, she's trying to look at him, isn't she? Because she sort of recognises him, trying to work out who he is. And it just reminded me of in Back to the Future 1, when Marty goes back to 55 for the first time, and he goes into the cafeteria, and his dad's there, George McFly, and there's that scene where he pans to George McFly, and then all of a sudden Michael J. Fox comes around the side, is looking at him as if to say, "Is that really, my dad or whatever?" And the way she was looking, and he's trying to turn away, and he like, I'm not going to tell. I know. He
activates the Bat fan, doesn't he?
Yeah, that sort of puts her off, doesn't it? But again, it was a little scene where she sort of started thinking, I recognise you, and the height deficiency should definitely make her suspicious that he's the smallest superhero we've ever seen at this point. But there's a bit slightly after that, David, and I've got all my hands up, and I think it's been lost in the later films. As much as I love the trilogy with Christian Bale and all the other films are a bit iffy with George Clooney and stuff. Val Kilmer's one wasn't too bad, but it's I love the bat sign on his suit. I absolutely love the yellow and black. That is, for me, Batman, and they've lost that, I think, in the later films. I don't know whether you agree, but I just thought it's so wasted in these later films. You don't even see it on the suit anymore. Yeah,
I do like the suit. So we probably haven't really spoken about the suit that much, have we? But I do love the suit in this movie. The only bit that jars with me a bit is he clearly can't turn his neck. So, to look around, he has to turn his whole body. So not really that practical, but it just looked cool.
Yeah. I mean, his ears are absolutely huge, aren't they? I mean, they are. They're huge. And the scene I'm watching now is a line I put in was, you've got this interaction in the Batcave, and he sort of starts going towards her, but he's a bit sleazy again, because he just says to her, like, there is something else you want. And then the next minute, we get this sort of, he throws the cape over her, and then Kim Basinger's on her bed at her apartment or whatever. And you're like, oh, hang on a minute, what's going on here? There's no explanation for why. Is he knocked her out? We know why
he nicked a film, didn't?
Yeah, I was just about to say we
got it stuffed down a bra from how she was looking for it.
Yeah, that's what I mean, because we get why she's done it, and obviously, but yeah, she's sort of like holding her chest. So you're thinking, well, what's going on here? How has he smacked her one? Has he? I just don't understand how he could knock her out. Why just putting the cape over her head? It didn't make any sense to me why Batman would do that.
Yeah, it was a little bit strange, but there's where you kind of get. And Batman, especially in the comics, he's the detective. That was his whole background and what have you.
Yeah.
So, he solved the Joker's Smilex conundrum. So it's not actually one product, which is what everyone assumed it was. You've got these 3 products. So he gives it to Vicky Vale so she can go and publish it and warn everyone about these products. And yeah, I think she'd taken some pictures, hadn't she? And so, he'd relieved her of those. Possibly.
Yeah, I don't even like to think about that with Batman, but yeah, I agree. It's a very, very strange scene. And then we get the next thing is Bruce Wayne then turns up at her apartment and he wants to reveal, he's trying, sort of like bumbling along, innit?
So have you ever seen the Superhero Cafe at all? It's kind of a YouTube series. It's pretty funny. They do a lot of the how it should have ended. So if you do that search on YouTube, so she, so any of the latest superhero films, and it's all animated, but the guys who do it are pretty funny, and the consistent characters are always Superman and Batman, just talking to each other, having a coffee in the cafe, and usually, they're talking about the latest movie and whatever. But whatever female character turns up, Batman's always like, "You want to know my secret identity?" Every time, and so it just reminded me of that. So they've essentially shared this one night together, and he's desperate to tell her that he's Batman.
Yeah, and I thought he takes a very, very big risk here because he's bubbling along. It's very sort of, this is where this sort of comedy actor comes in, doesn't it? Like this bumbling. He's turned from this super cool sort of millionaire who's betrayed himself to like he's panicking and stuff. And then she gets a knock at the door, and he's like, as she walks off, he's doing the old classic line of "I'm Batman," to himself and all this. And then the Joker comes in with his entourage, and we get this. He takes a Marty McFly type risk, as in I know I'm doing another Back to the Future one. I must be on a bit of a thing, but like Back to the Future 3, where there's the standoff, the guns scene at the end, and he just puts that sort of piece of steel on his chest, a la Clint Eastwood.
I'd forgotten about that. Yeah,
and he takes a big risk. Bruce Wayne, obviously thinking that Jack Nicholson, the Joker's just going to shoot him in the chest. Obviously,
So I guess a couple of things. So I didn't really like the way Keaton delivered that scene where
let's get nuts.
Yeah, let's get just, and again the size of him in his dad's suit. It just looked weird, and I didn't like it at all. But yeah, so he gets shot, and that was all part of his plan. That he had this little tray inside his shirt. No one could see it because he's got this oversized suit on, and I'd completely forgotten about the Back to the Future 3 thing. I was thinking more about Dumb and Dumber, where he goes in. Jeff Daniels' character gets shot at the end, but it's all part of a plan that to get the bad guy. And so he shows Jim Carrey. He shows, "Look, I've got a bulletproof vest on." And Jim Carrey's like, what if he shot you in the face?
Yeah.
You see that moment of realization dawn on Jeff Daniels. It's like, oh yeah, what would have happened then? Yeah. So and it just reminded me of that. So yeah, very convenient. He just aims for the chest there.
Yeah, the old classic one of he's going to shoot me through the chest, through the heart, sort of thing. And yeah, it fit the story. It's a hell of a risk and a hell of a game of poker to play, but it obviously pays off for him. And we get. I'll let you deliver this, Dave, but I think we get the best line in the whole film, which Nicholson for me always is synonymous with when he plays the Joker.
Yeah, I mean, again, that is that line, isn't it? So that's the real. He knows earlier in the film, so outside the courthouse, he knows this is Jack Napier. But when he's just before he shoots him perfectly in that square tray area that he's stuffed down his shirt, he says to him, "You ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight?"
Yeah, brilliant.
And, it's just so menacing, isn't it? And then you see Bruce Wayne. He's like, "What?" So you can tell he's heard that before. And what is it he says? I don't even know what it means, or he says, "I like to say that to all my prey," or something like that.
Yeah. It's a great line.
Absolutely brilliant line.
Yeah, it's a fantastic line. And then, what's the next bit? Oh, yes, you get like the Vicky Vale bit. But then what I don't understand is we get this thing now where there's a bit of a press conference and we get this flashback, don't we?
So Vicky sort of finds out, that Bruce's parents were killed, and then so we go on that flashback, and I guess this is what, when I started watching the movie and I saw that couple with their kid coming out the cinema, I guess that's what I thought. That's what this scene was. What I was thinking that was going to be. Yeah,
and I did as well.
So yeah, and that was recreated. Which one was it? Was it Batman versus Superman where they had the old the old pearl necklace dropping on the floor?
I think it was Batman v Superman.
I think it was, wasn't it?
Oh, Batman Begins. Sorry, it's Batman Begins. They didn't show it in the Dark Knight and stuff because it wasn't the Joker, was it? Who killed his parents?
No, that was something for the film, wasn't it? And I don't really like that when they make the universe so small that everything's completely connected between this handful of people. That didn't happen in the comics. The Joker didn't kill his mum and dad.
No, he didn't. And I know that's what people were saying when they had the petitions, like, why create this Jack Napier? He was never in the comics as a convenient gangster and the Joker, and it was just something Tim Burton wanted to put in there, which, like you said, it's too convenient. You get certain things, don't you, that stand out in these films, and that was just far too obvious. Story arc, really. And again, it ruined, I think as well, it diminished any chance of the Joker coming back if they'd carried on this series. I'm not saying he would have come back, because in most of the other films, he's one way or the other. Obviously, we know with Christian Bale, The Dark Knight, he'd gone into sort of Arkham Asylum, hadn't he, at the end, because he doesn't think but we had to, obviously, Heath Ledger died there, so we could never portray him again. But it never, the way they set this up with what they did and how he was, there was no other way that Batman could get his sort of revenge, I suppose. And I know we're not at that bit yet, but they're part of the film. So even though I thought Nicholson was great, that there was little things like that. But to me, this part of the film, Dave, and I've written this down, I'll be honest with you, I actually got to the point where I was like, I just don't care anymore, because I really bought into the film. But I just felt the film was so claustrophobic. I just thought this whole thing of it being, usually when they film films like Batman and 007 and things like that, they are filmed on a set all the time, and it doesn't bother me. But because you could just see they were recycling the same sort of areas, but just driving different cars back or using a different camera angle, and it just got, I don't know why, I just felt claustrophobic in some respects watching it, thinking it's the same stuff recycled over and over again each scene when they're in Gotham, and that there was no wide angle location stuff. It was all just tight, and you could just tell watching it now that it was on a TV set the whole way through, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't pick up on that at all, and I like that claustrophobic kind of dark feel to it. It's not quite as dark as I remembered it, but it's interesting what you say there. But I tell you what was weird in the next piece. So Vicky Vale and Bruce Wayne are having a conversation in the Batcave.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, hang about. Yeah. Did I go asleep or something? Did I miss a piece of the movie here? So he was going to tell her that he was Batman, and they got interrupted by the Joker. But Vicky Vale's right there in the Batcave having a conversation with Bruce Wayne. Not Batman, but Bruce Wayne. The Bat car, the Batmobile, is right out back there. We can see it. And I'm like, watching it thinking, have I missed something here?
Yeah,
How is she? Is she supposed to now know that he's Batman, or does she not notice she's now in the Batcave?
Well, Alfred just offers him up, doesn't he? Because I was researching it. They said people online were very much like what Christian Bale does with Alfred and Michael Caine and sacks him, sort of thing, doesn't he? He says, right, you're gone. Mm-hmm. That's what people were saying should have logically happened. He should have just said to Alfred, right, P45, on your way, son, you're gone. Go to someone else's house and wait on him. Because it didn't... This is where I got to the point where I was just like... not that I forgave stuff. I think because Jack Nicholson was so good, it just started to unravel for me, the film, Dave, which I never thought I'd say this after all these years, because it was such... Again, and I said this a few times, an important film, but watching it back at the start, I'm realising how important it was for me as a child because of the figures and the merchandise, like the T-shirts, everything. And I just watched it thinking, the same as you, like, why has she just come in the Batcave? How there's no logical reasoning again. How has she worked out he's Batman? Do you know what I mean? Like, as she drove on the same road in a Vauxhall Cavalier, as this. I just didn't make any sense to me at all, and that's where at that point I thought, no, this is just ridiculous. I thought.
Yeah, so I definitely don't remember picking up on that watching it years ago, but it really jarred with me this time. I'm like, what's going on here? But anyway, so we get to so the Joker, he's had his initial plot foiled for Smilex, hasn't he? But decides to, take over the airwaves again. So he's going to call out Batman essentially, and he's going to drop down $20 million in this big kind of parade in Gotham, and nothing will possibly go wrong there, will it?
well, I made a note on this because he then says he's on the TV. He's obviously hijacked the TV stations. He's then poisoned and killed various models, TV celebrities.
Free money, though.
Yeah, it's
I know where you're going.
The police don't do anything about him stabbing someone in broad daylight with about 100 witnesses, Batman included, or Bruce Wayne, with a feather, and he basically, takes his gangster out. Even if he's a gangster, he still actually killed someone in cold murder. But who do you want? Do you want me to just throw money at you and let's just forget about all the indiscretions you've done through the whole way through the film? Or do you want Batman who's actually been saving people? And that, at that point, I thought, yeah, I understand it's the Joker. It's this sort of parody, maniacal baddie. But why weren't the police doing something? Because he's probably killed about 4 or 5 people when they've actually been there, like you said before. Yeah. And that again was another plot thing. As much as Jack Nicholson delivered it in such a good way, this whole arc towards the end of the film I had a real big problem with, because I just thought this doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah. And I guess even before the actual parade itself, Batman goes, he blows up half of Axis Chemicals, which seems to be where they're holing up, and they escape on the Joker helicopter, don't they? So
yeah, he's done a good bit of rebranding, hasn't he?
He has, hasn't he? So the henchmen had already had their Joker stamped merchandise that they were going around in, and now we get the Joker helicopter.
He's done a good job. He knows how to sell himself, that guy. Anyway, I must give him that. But yeah. I don't know, Dave. I just started to lose interest in the film at this point, and I never thought I'd say that. I just really had problems with the last 20 minutes or so. It was just odd what they were doing. Like, they shoehorned in the Bat plane, or Bat as it's called in the other films, and again there was no even explanation that he had that. It's not like he was in the background when he went in the Bat cave or anything. It was just he appeared in it. Well, he must have a plane as well. It just little things that just started to grate on me. I don't know if it's because of watching the other films in later, like the Christian Bale stuff I regard in such high esteem. There's more logical process to what happened there, but I don't know.
Yeah, and I think, on my rewatch of this, it does seem that this is a stepping stone to those Nolan films, isn't it? I remembered this movie being as dark, but it wasn't. It was still it still had a lot of the Batman 66 influence from it. But, you know, there were a lot of things that Nolan took from this movie and you know, even from the subsequent movies, I think. But, you know, essentially Joker releases his poisonous gas, doesn't he? Surprise, surprise, you know, and all hell breaks loose. And again, I thought it was a bit weird where Vicky Vale was driving along and you've got Knox sort of planted on the front of the car.
I was like that.
What's going on? Why are you doing that?
But before that, he gets in the boot of his car, just gets a baseball bat, but he actually does the worst karate chop ever on the. Did you not notice that on the boot?
No,
Dave. Please, whatever happens, I'm on that scene now. So it's like 1 minute, 1 hour 40.
I'll have to go back.
The karate chop, because he says to her when it's all going off, I'm just watching it now, and he gets to the back of his car and he does like this feeble karate chop, but the boot actually opens and then gets a baseball bat, just starts taking names. Honestly, Dave, you've got to watch it, please. And he's got a toolbox in there. He's got a toolbox and rope, which actually in most countries
he's probably got some spanners and hammers and stuff in there.
Honestly, you've got to see it, and then he just starts taking names with the baseball bat with like the henchman, and it's like. I was absolutely hysterics when he did the karate chop, because it was almost like robbing Dick Grayson, you know. Oh my
Iron Fist.
Danny Rand, nothing will ever beat them karate chops. But yeah, please, Dave, just watch it and text me after we've done this, because it was the highlight of the ending for me. It was just comedy. It was actually funnier than some of the stuff that the Joker has done, if I'm being honest.
Well, I think one of the things I remembered, I think more from the game when I used to play it on the old Amiga, was when Batman flies through and then he collects up the balloons and snaps the balloons so they kind of float away. And you know, again, Nicholson's delivery is brilliant. You know, he stole my balloons. And then Bob, who's been his right-hand man all the way through the movie, he just shoots down, doesn't he? You know.
Oh, and like now the scene is where Knox is actually sat on the bonnet, and it's just why has he jumped on this car, which is obviously his car? Why has he jumped on it? It's not like Vicky Vale is a baddie or he's a baddie. They work together. They get on. They're amicable. It made no sense.
Strange, isn't it?
It's like he's trying to stop. It's like he's trying to stop someone stealing his car. It just made no sense. And then the next bit is for me as a kid. It was always one of them things. Even when I was 11 years old, thinking this bat thing. We've got a car that basically is impenetrable to bullets or whatever.
Is it the big handgun?
Yeah, the Joker
is that
pull
where you're
out
going?
A Smith & Wesson with a 2-foot long extendable chain or like extendable pipe on it, and can also shoot down the bat plane, which and then the whole thing, the way the plane comes down and everything, is Superman 2, because you can clearly see that it's a load of little plastic models and Matchbox cars as it comes down and hits the floor. And it was just, I was like, oh no, this is terrible.
Yeah, so I'm with you. I think even as a kid, that jarred with me as well. It's like I'm not having that gun will take down the bat plane. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But we do get a nice little showdown, don't we? So I guess Joker runs off with Vicky Vale, and but we get that showdown between the Joker and Batman. And one of the things, as they're going through a bit of fisticuffs, I think one of the things that I found really weird was when Joker was saying, what does Batman say? He says something about, you know, you killed my parents or something like that, and then Joker's saying something like, we could say, you know, you created me, I created you, you know, whatever. But how does he know who the parents are he's talking about?
Yeah, exactly. I've written that down. It didn't make any sense, because it would have given away who he was. Why didn't he just say to him, "You're Bruce Wayne"? I'm with you on that. I've actually written that down because I was thinking, and I rewound it slightly, thinking I've missed something here.
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
It didn't make any sense. I mean, That whole fisticuff scene, Dave, there's some brilliant lines from the Joker. I mean, he gets smacked in the mouth and then he throws out these false teeth. And then he gives him, and then, I mean, you've written, you say some of these.
No, I think, go on, you say, but my favourite line, I think you're going to say.
It's when he's about to drop him and he puts the glasses on and goes, you wouldn't hit a man with glasses. I thought that was brilliant.
His commitment to comedy is admirable, isn't it?
You've got to give him that. It's absolutely fantastic. And then there's a scene where they have these fisticuffs and they all end up over the side of like the monastery or church or whatever it's supposed to be, cathedral. And he says to Kim Basinger, who at this point is just turned into the stereotypical, and I mean this loosely, dumb blonde. And he just says, can you lend me a hand? And she goes to grab it. And it's
Again, his commitment there is admirable, isn't it?
Absolutely amazing. And then the whole thing happens and he falls off the side of the building, and we've got this maniacal laugh going off because all the police and Commissioner Gordon are surrounding his body because at this point, obviously, he's dead. And he's got like some sort of voice thing just laughing maniacally over and over again. And we get the thing.
He's just had blood all over his face, hasn't he? But when we go down to that shot, you know, he's got no blood over his face at all.
Oh, Dave, please, I know I'm going to backtrack on something slightly, but something I had a massive problem with in the whole film. This is where he absolutely went, and then going backwards slightly. Why, when he's driving the Bat, at what point did the Bat plane become a spaceship? And we get that stupid scene where he goes out of the Earth's atmosphere, and then it goes in the actual moon's circle and gives the Bat sign. I was like, oh no, it looked cool, but I was just like, what? That's just really
so it just has to be above the clouds, doesn't it? So you get aeroplanes that obviously go above the clouds. So it doesn't have to be in the space as such.
No, Dave, it was in space in my mind. But
the clouds, it's not like the clouds and then space.
No, he's in space in my mind, and that's it. He is. But
I mean, utterly iconic scene, though, isn't it? I mean, why? More to the point, why was he doing that maneuver?
No, he's left everyone on the ground and gone, hang on, let me just show you a trick. I could do a half pipe in me plane.
Yeah, a bit of a mid-air handbrake turn. Watch this, lads.
It was really, really... But anyway, going back to the ending now, because obviously we're at the end of the film, and then he's dead, and then we get like there's a big press... They seem to like these press conferences of all the sort of major players in Gotham being sort of open to anybody who's good with a sniper, a la Lee Harvey Oswald, allegedly, and they just like to have these things where they're on open shows, talking to people. Why they don't do it in a room with some cameras, I do not know. But they sort of... We then get the back signal unveiled, which is great, I must admit. It's a good little ending to the film, really.
And when they showed the bat signal, I kind of thought, oh, wait, yeah, so it is kind of an origin movie. So we didn't go right back to the start, but it was kind of the origin. And, you know, you can imagine this is where we drop into Batman 66, you know, where we have the old bat phone and bat signal. So, yeah, I quite like that. How they wrapped that up as well.
Yeah, I did. I thought the whole thing was good. And like I say, I feel bad because it was, again, as you get older, I don't know whether it's as I've got older, you sort of tasting a lot of things change, whether it's food, drink, or whatever. Your TV shows change. You get involved in things. Like, obviously, we're doing a podcast. There was no such thing when we were younger. But I just found that I enjoyed a lot of what it was about, and looking at the stuff that's come after it, it made more sense where they've taken plot twists for, especially Christopher Nolan. He's stuck quite to a lot of the plot things in this. But it's a 1989 film. Do you know what I mean?
Well, so should we go into our wrap up then?
Yep.
Let's wrap it up. I guess I should probably go first, shouldn't I? I think you went first last week, didn't you?
Yeah.
So I think we might differ this week, because I guess, and it all depends on our perspective. I think if you look at any film in the past, you're always going to look at it with the benefit of seeing many more movies since, haven't you? And then you can apply what you've seen in those later movies and think, oh, well, they did it better. So for me, you've got to look at it in the context of the time. And all we'd had before that was, I guess, we'd had some pretty terrible. I mean, Marvel were utterly awful at that time, weren't they?
Yeah.
Up into the 80s. I mean, the Hulk TV show was pretty good, but in terms of standing up, when we're looking back, we've absolutely got to review that Hulk TV pilot at some point, and we'll see how well that stands up. But so yeah, for me, I'm looking at it with the context of this is the late 80s. We've had Batman 66, we've had the Superman movies, and we've had some TV shows and some pretty terrible other attempted comic book shows. And I think it wasn't as dark as I remembered it being, but it was still pretty dark when you consider, what we had with Superman 1 and 2, and the evilness of snapping a red crystal and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So, for me, I think it stands up pretty well. And I think the reason it stands up pretty well in a lot of things, let's say 70 to 80% of it, is because they've set it in that kind of Great Depression time period, so there's no kind of, there's nothing 80s about that. Like say old Danny Elfman, he's not jumping around doing weird science in the background there. So I think that kind of helps it along a bit. But, there are some other things in there, some things with the plot that just jar a little bit. Keaton's performance, I'm kind of a little bit binary on it. Some of it I really like, and some of it I don't particularly like. But on balance, I'm going to send this to Atlantis. I'm still going to rate it quite strongly, because I'm looking at it in the context of the time that it was released.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. I can see that, Dave. However, no, I respect your review, Dave. And for me, watching it back, again, like you said, and I totally get that. The time, 1989, I was 11 years old, as I've said a few times. It was a great film then. It was somewhat different. We had, like I said before, the Back to the Futures were at the same time, things like that. All films that have stuck with me through my life. I can still put Back to the Futures on now. I've got them on Blu-ray, special edition, everything, like I say, like the Superman stuff. But for me, like I say, the last half hour or so, it just broke down the film, in my opinion. And I think Jack Nicholson was so good in the film, and he made the Joker, and it's obviously where Heath Ledger took his origins from, and obviously Cesar Romero as well, because that is what the Joker's about. I think it was slightly lost, the Joker, recently with the Suicide Squad and everything. Yeah. It didn't. Yeah, exactly. It just didn't make any sense. But this, for what he did, and it was a Brando type situation, Gene Hackman, where he was billed as the star, but he was billed as the star for a reason, because he actually was the star of the film. Because every scene he was in, even now after all this time, was so unpredictable. You knew there was going to be lines delivered, like go, go, go with a smile, because they were all like in the film, and they were in the Prince songs and stuff, which I remember. The Vicky Vale, you're never going to forget that name, Vicky Vale, because it was repeated over and over at the time, because it was such a critical success. It was everywhere around the late 80s, early 90s. But I just thought Michael Keaton, there was so much wrong that he was totally miscast. And I know you get directors who take actors with them over different, films. Like we were talking about Michael B. Jordan in the Black Panther, and he'd been taken by Ryan, what was his name? Is it Coogler? Ryan Coogler had taken him in most of his films and all of his major films he'd been in, whether it be Creed or some of the other stuff, because he trusts him as an actor. And he'd done obviously Beetlejuice, but he was so miscast. I mean, he was vertically challenged to start with. They tried to make him bigger with them ears, and then his afro haircut was just ridiculous. I'm sorry, but Bruce Wayne was never this guy. And I know George Clooney gets a lot of stick for what he played as Batman, but that's the sort of person. You know, Val Kilmer always looked weird in a Batman suit because he's got that weird mouth about him. But Bruce Wayne, for me, is always this side-parting, brown-haired, sort of
Adam
square
West.
jaw. Yeah, Adam West, square-jawed character. And that's who obviously he was based on. And I just had a massive problem with him. And like I say, I actually laughed more at just him running as Batman in some of them scenes because it was just ridiculous. And you can see some of the scenes as well, Dave. I don't know if something. Kim Basinger is actually stooping down. There's a couple of scenes where he's talking to him as Batman and she's having to stoop down so she doesn't look taller than him. And I'm like, why he would actually... He just looked like someone who was going to a sort of fancy dress Halloween party or something in that at times. And it wasn't until he got out of the Batmobile that this come out, and you were like, this is absolutely... I just couldn't take it away. And I remember as a kid thinking, it was like, I don't remember Michael Keaton in these other films as a comedian, and that I don't, because obviously I was never on my radar as a young kid. So it didn't make any difference to me when they cast him as Batman, who he was, because we didn't really... I wouldn't have known about the uproar back then. It's only researching it now, what people were saying about him. And I'll be honest with you, Dave, you're probably shocked by this. I've never seen Beetlejuice. So
Oh, really?
never ever watched it. Like Forrest Gump. I've never watched Forrest Gump, and I've never watched it. And you know the lines are, life's like a box of chocolate and that, but I've never watched Beetlejuice either. So I have nothing to measure it off. And I thought when he did the Bruce Wayne at the start, he was good. But when he was trying to play the vulnerable Bruce Wayne at the end, where he was trying to sort of reveal who he was and trying not to reveal... Then he was trying not to reveal who he was. So then he was trying to reveal who he was. I just thought he was terrible. And Jack Nicholson was absolutely outstanding in the film. For him alone, deserves, a couple of sort of our reviewing scale. I thought he deserved more, really. He needed more of a foil. A bit like last week when you were saying about The Losers, where The Losers was cast so well, but the actual baddie was just totally miscast and was terrible.
Yeah.
That's how I felt in reverse with this one, watching it again. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and so I think the difference between me, you mentioned Brando and sort of the likeness with Nicholson in terms of just taking that massive payday. For me, Nicholson owned this movie.
Yes.
Like Brando, the role he played, it could have been anyone. He did it quite well.
Yeah.
But it didn't need anyone special to play that role. Whereas this, I thought Nicholson earned, he deserved it, because he did own that movie for me.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think if anybody was to play the Joker again, and they would use this film and they would use The Dark Knight as two yardsticks to watch how you should play the Joker. And I think Jack Nicholson, in some respects, Dave, and I love Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight. I really, really do. I think it's such a good film. And I know we've not reviewed it yet. It's sort of a spoiler, really, so when we do review it. But I think Jack Nicholson was the best Joker in anything, whether it's a TV series or The Dark Knight. Just for this performance, I've heard you wincing there, Dave.
No, that's interesting because I think I'd say Heath Ledger for me. I think he was better. He just took that genuine, believable crazy a little bit more than. I think for me in Nicholson's Joker, there was still a little bit too much Cesar Romero, just without the mustache, but it was absolutely fantastic. I mean, there's not much in it, and in a different mood, I might flip it round and say the other. It's definitely up there, but for me, my Joker is absolutely Heath Ledger.
Well, you know what I'm going to do, Dave, don't you? I'm going to do that Guy for the Fast show, because when we actually review The Dark Knight, I will be saying
change your mind, yeah.
I think I was wrong, actually, because I mean that with utter respect to Heath Ledger, because I absolutely love The Dark Knight. It's one of my favourite superhero films. You know, the whole trilogy is, to be fair. But again, I just can't. And there was too many little things that kept popping up towards the end, and like you say, the Vicky Vale thing, finding out he's Batman. Again, we haven't got a full sort of Lois Lane thing where there's a bit of a scene. She thinks he is or he isn't. We just get nothing. We get her sort of looking across his nose and trying to look in his eyes in the Batmobile, and then we get this sort of whole thing together. And then she just appears in the Batcave, and again, it just ruined the whole sort of mystique of who he was, because in one scene he's trying to protect who he is, and the next scene she knows anyway, so you might as well have told her when he took her back. So to these little things, as a fan, just killed it for me, and it killed that immersion. And I sat there for about 20 minutes, half an hour at the end, thinking, I just don't care about this film. So for me, Dave, I'm sending it to Hell's Kitchen. I thought, great, Jack Nicholson, great film. Please don't not watch it, because it's the origins of all the superhero films, and it's acknowledged that is when we said this about Superman, this is actually the template for the films that come out now, and you need to watch it, because it wouldn't have made DC into what it was. I know Marvel's taking over now, but at the time DC was just taking names. So it's just a Hell's Kitchen. I can't look past anything. This should just be Batman starring Jack Nicholson, because everyone else I just thought was terrible in certain points of the film.
Yeah. For a moment there, I thought you were going to have it on par with Nick Fury.
No. Nothing is going to get near Nick Fury.
Very good. So I guess by about 10th episode, I get the impression I'm probably rating these a little bit higher on average than you. But when we've done about 10, we'll have a look back and see how that is.
What you should do, Dave, or what we should do, is get the 10 and see where we are, and then people can call me out saying, "What are you talking about?" Because I'm not trying to be overcritical, but when I'm sat there watching it, I'm trying to immerse myself in the film, you know, like you would anyway, not just from a reviewer's point of view, because I know obviously our perspective of how we watch these films is changing by the episode, because we are looking at different things now that we never would have looked at. But I just wasn't immersed in it. It ended up being like a clock watching exercise towards the end. And I don't know. I was just disappointed, I think. And I think as well, the first hour or so, I was thinking, gosh, I can't believe I've not watched this film for so long. You know, going to hold films of that age in such high esteem. Even stuff like, not superhero films, like sort of Lethal Weapon, Beverly Hills Cop, you know, totally different genre of films, but they always hold up for something I could just put on and watch it. I know every word in them, and I can watch it. But this, towards the end, I was thinking, this is why I've never had it. I've never got it on Blu-ray or anything, because I thought I haven't bought it. And usually you do if you like it. And I'm thinking, this is why, because it just died off for me at the end.
Yeah.
So,
okay, very good. So. Yeah. Like I say, another absolutely seminal movie, though, no doubt. Definitely that stepping stone for me. It's certainly, but we'll see what we think in comparison to say Batman and Robin. So you're right down at one end of the scale there, so you haven't got much room to move.
Yeah, true. Yeah, true. Oh, don't worry, I'll move on that one, Dave.
So should we wrap it up there then?
Yeah, great. Thanks everyone again. We said at the start, this has been episode 7 of the Comics in Motion podcast. Please get in contact with us on all our social media channels. On Twitter, it's at Comics in Motion P. Email is comicsinmotionpodcast@gmail.com, and just give us a message, a DM or a tweet, just regarding if there's anything you want us to review, anything in what we've said in this review or any of the previous reviews that you don't agree with or you agree with, or anything you want us to sort of look in depth and get out there for the films and put them out as research, anything you want us to expand on the facts that we do. we're just open to it as we change it each week. I think the review system, Dave, that you've come up with is great, and I think it works so well because it isn't a 1 to 10. And I agree with you. There is certain things we might change or we might look at and go, hang on a minute, we can't keep putting things in certain pictures. I get that, but I think at the moment it seems to work for what we've done.
Yeah, and I think the other two people who voted last week agree with you.
And one of them wasn't me, so yeah. Now, Dave,
I won't be doing that poll again this week, I don't think.
Maybe you should do a poll of a poll, like
Should I do a poll, yes or no? At least I've only got 2 options.
Just answer it yourself, Dave. I probably won't answer it, will I? So, yeah. No, have you got any selfless plugs, Dave?
Yeah, so I mean, just before I go onto the plugs, I would say go ahead and hit that subscribe button on whatever your podcast catcher of choice is, and then you get all the episodes downloaded automatically to your device when we post them.
Yep. Yeah.
In terms of plugins, so recorded the Grassroots Coachcast last night, so I'll probably edit that in the next couple of days, so that'll drop at the weekend there. So that was good fun. We were talking about kind of arrival activities and warming up there. So just about what we do kind of now and what we're looking to do in the future.
That's good.
About yourself, Chris?
Yeah.
Any selfless plugs?
Well, you know me, Dave. I'm the podcast king, so I've always got something I'm promoting. I've done episode.
I tell you what, I'll log off, shall I? And I'll come back in half an hour when you've rattled off all your podcasts.
There's even some that Sam don't know about. No, there's not. No, if she's listening, there isn't. Trust me, it's not. No, obviously my normal podcast is the Contextual Podcast. Contact me on Twitter. I've got 2 accounts there. One's just for the main podcast itself, which is at Contextual Podcast. And then I've got my personal one at Contextual Pod 1, which is the one that I interact on more than anything. The podcast one is where I post all the podcasts and sort of promote it from there. On YouTube, Contextual Podcast, Stitcher, iTunes, everything basically. If it's there as a social media tool, I'm on it. Facebook, everything. In terms of a couple of things, there will be a Las Vegas one coming up after the sort of success of episode 39 with Steve in Las Vegas, UK. I'll keep you posted on that. But if you do want to email into the show, it's the contextualpodcast@gmail.com. And I've got nothing else actually, Dave. There's no hidden gems coming up yet, not that I know of. So I'm sure there'll be extensions as we go along as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, this episode will drop at the weekend, and we'll figure out what we're doing for the next one. Have you started working at your series yet?
No, I haven't actually, but I can do because I'm off now for a good 6 days. So I'll start watching an episode a day. So, I'm not until next Wednesday now, so I've got no excuse, Dave. But, I'm happy to that if you want to do the series, whatever you think for the next one.
Yeah, so I think so. I don't think I'm quite going to be able to go through them at the pace you are with 6 days off. But so we need to do another movie, I think, next week, and then we'll do the series after the week after that. Right,
cool. That's good for me. But, thank you, everyone, for listening in, tuning in. We've had great feedback. We enjoy doing it, and just keep on listening, subscribing, reviewing for us, and please leave them reviews, as Dave has said. So I've been Chris. I'll pass you over to Dave to lead us out.
Thanks very much. So I've been Dave. You've been listening to the Comics in Motion podcast. Thanks a lot, guys, and we'll speak to you again soon.
Bye.
Something, my friend. You ever dance with the devil in the dead of your mind? What? I always ask that of all my prey.
What are you?
I'm Batman.
I'm